top 10 hottest comics of the week based off of Cover Price's data. That's right, real data off of Cover Price. They release a list on every Monday of the top 10 hottest comics of the week based off of sales data. We talk about it on our Friday show and pick the 3 most interesting picks of the week. Chris deciphers those 3 picks, and we just get into a discussion about it. So let's just do it, guys. Let's just do it. We're going to talk about the top 10 hottest comics right now. I got to get my notes ready.
Do it live.
All right, at number 10, we have Thor 6/17, the first appearance of Kid Loki. Y'all know why that should be on the list. At number 9, we have Avengers, the Terminatrix Objective, the first appearance of Goliath. You all should know why that's on the list as well. At number 8, we have Black Cat Annual number 1. First appearance of Tiger Division. A lot of individual first appearances in that as well. At number 7, Spawn number 1. I have never seen this issue before. No idea why it's on the list. Don't know anything about it. Number 6, we have Something is Killing the Children. The local comic shop day foil variant. That's interesting to me. Number 5, we have White number 1, Black Mask Studios 2021. At number 4, we have Avengers number 2, 2016. Just a sweet Alex Ross cover with all of the Kangs on there. At number 3, we got Sleigh Bells, good friends of the show. I believe they're on your show as well, the Spine Ticks. Dinesh and Warren. Good people. Sleigh Bells number 1. At number 2 is Infamous Iron Man number 1, Tony Stark. First AI appearance. And at number 1, I don't understand. I don't understand this, Sith. I don't understand this, Chris. XFactor number 10, The Death of Scarlet Witch.
Temporary.
Probably. I mean, you don't have a crystal ball there, right? You're not using any sort of wizardry or magic spells to figure this out, are you?
Uncle Ben dies. Like, when does Uncle Ben come back, right? Like, why can't he come back? I mean, everybody else will come back.
At this point,
right?
No. Right? At this point, no.
Give him like superpowers, man. Give him like an extra beanbag or something. I don't know.
I think people would riot.
Call him. How about Ben Pool or Spider Ben?
Ben Pool.
That's awesome.
I like it.
A 65-year-old man in a Deadpool suit.
No, in Gwenpool's outfit. Put him in that.
Oh, that would be that'd be awful. Amazingly awful, though. All right, Chris, you got 3 interesting picks here. Give us your first interesting pick. What do you got?
Well, again, I wasn't hugely impressed with this list. Some rollovers from last week again, but I was able to pick 3. My number 3 pick was Avengers 2. Really interesting book. Hitting the top 10. This was the 2016 run. I love Alex Ross, so I absolutely love this cover. This cover obviously features Kang and some of his variants. Kang, Immortus, Ramatut, Iron Lad. Now, let's look at these numbers here. 244% increase in sales with a $25 high Ross sale. I picked this book because what this is showing me is, again, everyone has their eyes on the MCU. Everyone is watching these movies and watching these shows and is just going out and buying what they're seeing, buying what they think is coming. And I am all for that. And to an extent, they're doing it with books that aren't even essentially keys. So to my knowledge, all this book really is a cover featuring all of these variants. And we are going to presume, and again, a little bit of a spoilers, but not much. We're going to presume that we may see more of these variants in the MCU when it comes to Kang. So, and that's it. Now, you can look at this $25 high raw and take that with a grain of salt. Will this book be a $20, $25, $30 book long term? Will it even increase further in value? I'm going to sit here and say no. And that's not why I picked it, though. I picked it because even if this price, goes back down and the book kind of dies off some, and maybe a couple weeks from now, nobody even cares about this book anymore. At least to, make it hit the top 10. I just think there is a love for the hobby. And I'm going to ask you guys, Jeff, do we really think that people, and maybe some are, but do we really think the majority of people that are going and buying this book are like, I'm going to go buy anything Kang because I want to flip it and get rich? Or is it just something in this day and age where we see these characters manifest in the MCU and we want to collect anything that's hot that features those characters just because we're involved in the characters and in the collector in us we want to have it, right?
I got a few observations. Number one, I remember when Secret Wars 1984 came out, nobody gave a shit about Kang or the Beyonder or Molecule Man or Ultron. But you know what I mean? That's when I really got my first exposure to Kang. And I thought he was dope, but he was just in that mix of characters. So it's funny to see all this play that he's getting now. It's funny to see, the MCU and these, it's, Flag Smasher and it's, all these characters as they're coming around.
Right?
Yeah, on the schedule, they get all excited. Now, I will say, like you said, Alex Ross, I mean, I'd never seen that cover before, and that is dope just art-wise. And just to see them all in a line, that is sick. But yeah, I mean, it's like there's some people who I think they're collectors and like, I just need that right now. I got the instant FOMO. I need to buy it. And there's other smart flippers who are like, yo, I think if I procure that on the cheap, I can put it up on the bay and X my return and then put that to a path to a key. But yeah, I mean, dude, that was a sick pick, bro. Cheers to you.
It is, but I'll tell you what. I think a lot of that, a lot of that has to do with the chatter around Kang, Immortus, and everybody else who's involved in Kang. But like, because you got Iron Lad on there too. But I think a lot of that also has to do with Alex Ross's greatness. And I would really love for somebody to say, "Oh, I know somebody that hates Alex Ross." Like I can't imagine anybody out there that's like, "God, this guy's garbage." Like honestly, let's be honest. Like seriously, there's no way. Alex Ross is just, and the setup, what you said, Sid, the setup of this cover, the way it is designed, looking down this kind of like, it's just the staggered line of Kangs. It's awesome, man. I think there's a whole bunch of factors that are aligned for this book that have kind of shot it up.
Absolutely. Indeed.
That's all I got to say about that. All right.
Easy, Forrest Gump.
There was a lull there. I got uncalled for Forrest Gump. I'm sorry. Moving on, though. Chris, what is your second most interesting pick from this list?
All right, Jeff. My second pick is your favorite book of all time. This book, I picked it last week and talked about it.
Yes, you did.
And it was your favorite book of all time last week. Mm-hmm. It's your favorite book of all time again. I'm gonna get some water before I talk about it because it's just that amazing.
It makes no sense.
I love how you keep saying that. Look, this book was number 1 on the list today. It's my number 2 pick, and it's XFactor number 1. Now,
number 10.
Sorry, thank you, Jeff. XFactor number 10. The death of.
He's cracking up on
the temporary death.
The first appearance of Benpool. the death of Scarlet Witch, right? So now, if we could replay the little snippet from last week, that would be great. But I'll just give you guys a little tidbit. I talked about this book last week because I talked about how, similar to how we just talked about Kang, anything that's going on in the MCU and you bring these characters back. This is a bit different because it's a new release. You bring these characters back into the limelight, into the new releases and comic books. And those people that are lingering around from the success of the MCU are diving right into it. So I call that a good thing. It's really mixing up and interlocking collectors with folks that are just so tuned into the MCU. And I'm all for it. Now, I wasn't talking about value, about this book shooting up in price and being worth something. No, I just mean we are paying attention to characters because we are loving what we're getting when it comes to these movies and TV shows. And it's selling copies of new books. It's healthy for the market. It's healthy for the publishers. And the fact that this book was selling for $50+ or $40+ on eBay last week shows that when it came out and hit the shelves, it's sold out because people weren't able to go to the LCS and find it, so they were willing to pay more to buy it off of eBay and such, right? So regardless of what the book's going to do long term, I'm just saying, look, it just shows that a lot of people are just diving into the hobby right now, and we have the MCU to thank to really getting us in both of these different medias and tying them together. Great, right? So Jeff and I both agreed, though, it's like, look, you know, when it comes to the long scheme of things, the death of Scarlet Witch, okay, I mean, come on, guys, really. Now, let's look at what this book has done since last week, okay? It sold 53 more copies this week, which is great. That's why it was number one. I don't think, was it number one or number two last week, Jeff?
I can't remember. I don't think
it was number one or two. It was one of them. But it's hit number one. But check this out. Last week, it had a high raw sale of $45. This week's high raw sale, $17. Recent average, $8. So what is this book already doing? It's dropping in price. It's dropping in price. So that's why I'm teasing Jeff, saying it's his favorite book of all time. Jeff, you know, Jeff is like, this book, why are people paying $45 for this book? And I'm right with you, Jeff. But I'm going to tell you again, I like that this book is here because this book dropped in value almost back down to cover price, and it's still selling. And that, to me, is a good thing because people are still just buying comic books. And it's that simple to me when it comes to this. It's not always about the value or the price that people are paying.
That's fair. That's fair. I guess it's an interesting kind of storyline for maybe new collectors that are like, oh shit, Scarlet Witch died, what have you. But Sith, you know, I've probably known you for almost a year now. I don't know you that well, but I feel like I know you well enough to know you wouldn't pay $45 for this comic book, right?
I sent you those candid photos of me, right? No, like my man Azor says in the chat, FOMO, right? But I will say, especially with these X titles, they're doing interesting things, man. I mean, you read just last week, you know, X-Force 21, right? Had the second appearance of Manslaughter. You don't know who that is? Tune into my man Azor's The Professor dropping knowledge, right? You take Hellions 13, second appearance of Locust Vial, go back to 10 of Swords. So I mean, I think there's a lot of interesting things in those X titles. I'm not paying $45. I'm waiting. I'm letting it cool down. But at the same time, the best thing I did as a kind of a reader collector is I started reading these comics and putting them on slides and documenting all the interesting things. The first appearance, second appearance. What is this? Why did they bring a character back from the 80s and slap a second appearance? What are they doing with that? Look at these MCU movies. I mean, all these obscure characters that they're putting in and using, right? And my whole thing is I just don't want to pay more for a book I want. I want to grab that at a less price. Some people want to flip them, and that's cool too. But as a collector, I want to stay on top of this to get the books I want and pay less, not $45.
That's part of the game too, and that's actually exciting as well. But I agree, not $45. But it goes to what you're saying too. Read the books as well. Yeah. That's how you're going to gain the most knowledge about this, right? Is reading the books and taking it all in. And the more you're knowledgeable about these books, you're not going to get caught up into this FOMO of like, Chris, you love doing your key collector dance. It's basically, you do it better than me, but notification. I don't know. You do that way better than me. Your dance is awesome. Again, the best advice anybody can give anybody in this hobby is read and do your research. That'll help you avoid any sort of situations where you're paying $45 for this book. I cannot believe somebody paid $45 for this book. Anyways, moving on, Chris.
Before we get into number one, I do want to say though, again, going back to Kevin Feige being in control of the comic books right now, and to what Sith was saying, it's good to pay attention to what's going on in the new releases as well, because we know, and Jeff, you and I have talked about this a lot, we're going to start seeing stuff happen in the new books that can then go over to the movies. Like, why do they bring Harley? You know, the kid from Iron Man 3.
Oh yeah.
Into the comic books and Web of Spider-Man #1. You know, because you know, you start building it up. Because we talked about this. Kevin Feige doesn't want, because they did that when the MCU started getting big, and when they did the Marvel Now thing in 2012,
right?
And they started like taking everything that was going on in the movies and trying to duplicate that in the comic books. It don't work that way. You gotta insert it into the comic books and then allow it to then fall into the movies. And I'm seeing this happen more and more. That's why, look, we already had something in WandaVision that's seemingly not even retconning, but adding depth to Wanda's origin about her having these powers all along. Is she a mutant? Now, Wanda is being brought back in to the X books. Why is that happening? We have WandaVision coming up. We know X-Men are coming. So, you know, again, I think there's a lot going on where a lot of these things are going to be coming back into play in the MCU. And like Sis said, man, read your books. And like I say, take advantage of pull lists, take advantage of the previews orders where you get 35% off. You know, there's no need to pay for this book for $45. But those that are, I just hope you're doing your research. And I hope you're one of those that, you know, maybe you just want to read the book. You missed out and you can't wait to see what's happening in that issue. And you're rolling in dough and you don't care about paying $45 for it, even if it's worth $17 or $8 the next week. I don't know.
Yeah. And Jeff, to Chris's point, I mean, I was just at Disney California Adventure on the Web Slingers ride. They got a portrait of Harley up on the wall. You don't put a portrait of Harley up on the wall if you don't plan to do something with him, right? I mean, it's like they got like five different characters on the wall there. They made a conscious decision like, hey, we're going to put these characters up and then we're going to make a comic book out of this damn ride, right? I mean, they're thinking they're ahead of us. And so we're just trying to keep up.
It's the Feige effect, man. Like he's running shit. He's running it. He runs it, guys. And I don't think I don't think there are just coincidences here, right? I don't. Like you going to the Avengers campus or whatever that is. It's like, and he was also in for a split second in Endgame. You know, they brought him back for that. It was a nice sentimental touch, right? But really, the touch was there with all of those people coming out to see. Anyways, it's fascinating because most of the people, even myself, I'm like, who the fuck is this kid? Like, who is this person? Like, and then it's like you had to read after the fact. Oh, it's Harley Keener, the kid from Iron Man 3, 10 years ago. You don't even recognize him at all. Feige runs shit, so we'll see. And I agree with this. Like I said, 100%. I'm in on this. In Feige, we trust 100%. Like absolutely, he's never done us wrong. You know, there have been some subpar films from the MCU, not good actually, but their batting average is. I
like that. I like the batting average analogy.
They're doing well.
Do we get to guess what Chris's number one pick is?
Yeah, let's do it. I'll bring that. That'll be fun. I've never done that before.
Yeah,
let's do it. Everybody guess in the chat, but go for it, Sith.
What's my number one pick? Obviously, it's not number one on the list because we already talked about that.
Right. I mean, I can go two ways. I can go culturally, or I can go, popularity wise. I think I'm gonna. I mean, okay. I'm gonna have one filed away as a backup.
This is cool.
I'm thinking he's gonna roll with White.
Okay, I want to see if anybody has anything to say in the comments here. It doesn't look. I think P-Kill says Avengers. I guess that's the Terminatrix one. That okay. Number 9. 8 or 9?
My backup, by the way, is something that's killing the children.
7.
No, nobody's gotten it, guys.
Okay, I will say this. The reason why I didn't pick the other Avengers book is because it's basically the same thing as Avengers 2. You know, I mean, you got the same hype around it. So I didn't want to pick 2 to talk about the same type of, Loki spec. So that's off the list. I'll tell you that. Got to tell you guys that straight up.
Here's the deal. We're at the point. Nobody's gotten it, Chris. It's time.
Yeah, not even me?
Nope.
Damn.
Nope. So All right. Now, and this was a tough one. I said, because, there are some on this list, and, I like to mix in independents. Jeff knows this. Viewers probably know this. I'd love to dig into the independents. But this talking point to me, it may seem mundane because it seems so basic. But to me, it's not. And I'm going to explain why. And my number one pick is infamous Iron Man #1.
Check this out.
Go, Mark got it. That's what's up. That's what's up.
All right. Tell us.
All right. Yeah, so let's talk about it. Infamous Iron Man #1. This has been on this list for a few weeks now, over, I don't know, the last couple of months, right? It's kind of came and gone. Like I said, this may seem like obvious. Oh, well, it's just another Marvel spec book. But here's the thing about this book. Let me just talk about numbers, and I'm going to talk about it. 192% increase in sales this week, a high raw for $48. This book keeps coming back based on rumors from nobody. Besides collectors and everyone in the community wanting to see Robert Downey Jr. return. And this is why it's so interesting to me, though, and why I picked it. And it all revolves around Robert Downey Jr. Robert, first off, we thought we were going to get, there was so much talk, even I don't remember, I'm sure, I believe like Screen Rant even was talking about it. Some of the Hollywood Reporter, even the big outlets, the trustworthy outlets were saying, Robert Downey Jr. rumored to make a cameo appearance in the Black Widow film. That didn't happen. The director came out and said, we were talking about it, we were thinking about it. I don't think they filmed anything, but they said we scrapped the idea because we didn't want the viewers to feel like Scarlett Johansson needed any kind of support to hold her own weight in her own film. I get that. They didn't go there. Are we really banking on Robert Downey Jr. making a return to the MCU? And if so, on a Disney Plus platform with an Ironheart TV show. So one part of me is like, that's not how it's going to go. There's no way. There's just no way. He died. We're going to, he's killed off. He's not going to, if he comes back, it's going to be in some epic way that I don't even know, right? But then there's another part of me that looks at this Ironheart show being greenlit so early on. I think a lot of us could probably sit and say, once we knew that Tony was gone, we're going to get Ironheart at some point.
Yep.
I did not expect it to come this fast. So then you ask the question, how are they going to flesh out this character? How are they going to explain Ironheart right away after Tony Stark's death? I mean, and then you start thinking about it, and you start putting it together. What can really drive this series? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Can an Ironheart series really do the Iron Man legacy justice from a character that we've never seen and never heard of and know nothing about in the MCU? Can it hold its own legs without having a Tony Stark presence?
Like straight up raw, you know what I mean? Like, because usually they bring in those characters a little bit and then give them more of a spotlight. If you're just like, hey, straight up Riri, here you go, there could be a lot of spotlight on that. But you bring in, kind of an AI presence, or what about a variant? I mean, this whole variant situation is, like with Black Panther, you can do a lot with that now and explain that away. As Azor says, anything is fair game now, Yeah.
I don't know. I do hear what you're saying. It's like, I think Riri would be a success on her own.
I'd watch it.
I'm definitely going to watch it, no doubt. I'm super psyched for it. But I think Riri would be a success on steroids if Downey Jr. was involved in any way, even only if it's his voice. Even only if it's his voice. Now, is that a business move or is that a content move? I don't know. I don't know.
Both?
I don't know, because the way they've laid things out in the MCU, you have Peter Parker being kind of his protege, right?
Yep.
He's gone. Iron Man is gone. Tony Stark is gone in the MCU. How does that set up for Riri to be his protege in a way? You know,
Yep.
so
Yet he's alive in comics. That's the weird thing, right? Like you have Iron Man alive in comics, but dead in the MCU. And that just goes to show you kind of the different forks that they really are, comics and the MCU. You know,
Right.
yeah.
The
And here's
comics
a good
aren't
point, though. Isn't
inspiration.
there going to be an Armor Wars show with Rhodes? Yes, maybe
Yep.
Rhodes could be the kind of the mentor. I don't know, but he's not. Rhodes isn't the kind of the genius, the inventor. He's the guy that fucks shit up. Is basically what
You
he
know
does.
what? I'm so glad Tony brought this up, though, and I don't mean to be like Captain Obvious here, but if we look at ethnicity of the two characters, there could be a way that makes sense of how she gets brought in. She could be like a niece or somebody of Rhodey, and there's a relationship there that might make it work. Because again, the one thing, here's the thing with me. I don't think there's going to be a variant of Robert Downey Jr. of Tony Stark played by Robert Downey Jr. To me, that totally makes his death just
Waters
diminish.
it down. It waters it down.
It's like, oh well, so much for that moment. Now,
Yeah.
there could be an alligator Tony Stark as a variant.
Oh yes, bring him in.
Something like that. So I'm taking that off the table, right? And I'm with Jeff. How are they gonna? I don't see Tony Stark being a mentor to somebody else other than Peter Parker, or it diminishes all that they built. But if you bring in another mentor to Rhodey, and then have the Tony Stark AI tech there, it takes away that mentorship, but yet you still get the support of the voice of Robert Downey Jr.
I'd hate to be AI because I couldn't drink these beers.
You'd be really frustrated. Like
I
it would
would,
be
man.
so frustrating. This is what's fun about the MCU at this point now. It can go anywhere, especially with this multiverse being introduced in Loki. Literally, like you see it the way that it's being explained, the multiverse. It can absolutely go anywhere. I'm excited for Riri. I'm excited for everything we have coming up with the Marvel Universe. So it's
I'm gonna say my prediction. Can I?
Yeah, you're allowed. It's your show too.
My prediction is this. I think, remember, because we got the kind of a teaser of the AI at the end of Endgame where he was talking to his daughter. I think we might get some type of AI recording, or a recording that's kind of like Tony listening to his dad in those tape recordings.
Oh,
and it's gonna be a 1 episode cameo of Robert Downey Jr. Talking, doing something that's gonna motivate Riri, and then that's all we get.
That'd be dope. Honestly, I'd be down for that, because that doesn't water down. It's actually kind of a sentimental callback, right? Yeah. It's a sentimental callback. Man, I miss this guy. Miss his character.
Can we get an AI Eazy-E then? I mean, it's been too long.
Well, we had the Tupac hologram.
I need Easy, man.
Yeah, I mean, anything's possible. It's 2021. I think anything is possible these days. Man, that was a good top 10 hottest comics of the week. That there ends our top 10 hottest comics of the week.